Hello there and welcome to Sawtill Show number 9. Progress continues on our sawtill. Let me show you where we are. First of all, you'll notice I've applied a finish, Danish oil, 2 coats, and I just love the color and the grain. I'm so glad I didn't paint this, and I'm so glad I didn't stain it. I really like the way it looks. Now, I think I mentioned last time we were going to begin by tacking these backboards on, and I've decided to go ahead and screw them in place, and let me tell you why. I might want to remove these backboards. Remember, I'm putting kerf boards in here and maybe other things to mount my saws, and they'll be screwed in from the back of these rails. And if I needed to make any changes, I'd have to tear these boards off to get at those screws, and that would be rather destructive. So with screws, it's a lot easier to do that if I change my mind. And I'll just show you real quickly here. Those are the screws, nothing fancy, but they have been put in there so that to allow for seasonal movement. Now, next we're going to be making the drawers, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Let me show you where we are with that. In my usual fashion, I'll make one ahead of time and then we'll make one together, and here we go. This one here is in progress. And you can see it's about as typical as a drawer of this kind gets. I've got half-blind dovetails along the front. I've got through dovetails along the back. I've got a groove along the bottom that will accept our panel. And the back is open to accept the bottom panel, which goes like that. That's about as typical as it gets. I'll be cutting this off, by the way, to have it fit. But there it is. Very simple. Now, let me show you what's not so typical about this drawer. If you notice these half blinds here, usually you would end on a half pin here and a half pin there. On this one, I end on a partial tail. And I do that because it allows me to put this groove much lower on this small drawer and have this tail cover the groove. So typically you'd have a 1/2 inch thick drawer, and this is 1/4 inch. So that's why I'm doing that. If your head's about to implode right now with all of this kind of thing, don't worry about it. I think it's going to make a whole lot more sense once we get going here. So hang with me. So anyway, let's get started with our drawer. Okay, here we are. I've cut my drawer parts ahead of time, and let's talk about stock selection. Here's the front. Front goes here, and all of the fronts are cut from a single board, so the grain is continuous all the way along the front. I think that's a nice feature to have when you're doing drawers in a row like that. So that was done. Now the sides and the back. I've used the straightest grain, most stable wood I could find. When you're doing drawers like this, you want wood that's going to be nice and stable and very, very straight grained. I'm using rift sawn wood here. You can see the growth rings run diagonally. Better still would be quarter sawn, where the growth rings run across, and that's better than the flat sawn wood where you are more prone to cupping. So I've done that, and I have nice straight grain this way as well. Remember, we're going to be planing the sides, the top edges, and also the bottoms, so you have to develop a strategy with the grain direction to avoid chipping out and, God forbid, spelching. You want grain that is consistent all the way through for that reason. So I've done all that, and we're all set here. Regarding fitting the drawers, I've got this cut so it fits like that nicely, and I have a consistent gap that goes around here. It's a scant 32nd of an inch. The bottom right now is resting on the bottom, but that'll get a consistent gap also. Later on you'll see what I mean. I've also put on here cabinet maker's marks. Once I've got my boards oriented for the drawer, I want to make sure that I can reassemble everything very quickly and I don't get things mixed up. So you make these marks here, and you can see them here. I got the sides, you put them together, and I make a triangle, and that points towards the front. So now I know that those are the top edges, and they go this way, not that way and any other way. I can always restore my order there. Same thing with the front and back. There they are. Top edge. And this is the face. So very important when you're working with a drawer that you don't get your sides and your backs and your fronts mixed up. Let's mark these with a marking gauge, actually 3 marking gauges, to get all of our scribe lines on here. The first mark I'm going to make is with my wheel gauge, and I'm going to be marking my half blinds. So I set that there. There's that one. Now I use this same setting for the fronts of the sides, because they're going to be going into that scribe mark there. They have to be the same length. So I mark them next. I keep this set for every other drawer I make. Then I need to mark for the depth of my drawer sides going into these tails, or into this front. So I have that one set. And I need the same mark on where? The back and front of my backboard. Okay. And for the back ends of my sideboard, I'm using a 3rd setting, and this is going to be slightly greater than the thickness of my sides. Okay, I've plowed my grooves in the sides and in the front. Now I've clamped my sides together, and I'm going to lay out my dovetails first with my dividers. You've seen me do this before. Okay, now my marker. Good. And now I have to saw them out. Okay, we've made our saw cuts, and now we're going to be removing the material between the dovetails. You've seen these steps before, so we're going to be moving along at a more abbreviated pace until we get up to the half blinds. That's an area we haven't seen before. So let's get going. Okay, now we're at the point where we need to cut out the tail sockets for the half blind dovetails. This is what we're working on right here. This is the half blind. You can see that the tails don't go all the way through to the front. So what I've done is I've traced that like that onto my front board here and marked them out clearly so I don't make any mistakes. And now what I need to do is cut down here. I can't cut all the way across the top because it's a half blind. I can only cut on a diagonal. So I think you'll see what I mean here in a second. Ready to go? Now, as you've seen, when I saw down here, I can only go so far on a diagonal, which means that when I cut the waste out, I have to chisel the rest of the way. But there is another technique that some people use, and I think it's pretty clever. It uses a card scraper, and it uses the card scraper to extend those kerf lines by hitting it with a hammer. So what I'm going to do is set that in there and tap it all the way down and cut those fibers of wood. So let's see how I do here. Sort of crude but effective, I guess you'd say. Okay, at this point, it's chiseling again. I like to start right on the line. I'm just very, very careful until I build up a shoulder. Can you see blood?
Yes.
Okay. I'll mention that. Okay, I thought I could hide it, but apparently I can't. I cut myself right here. And we're going to have to stop and have Dr. Jonine look at this, and then we'll come back to more of this. Ready?
Yeah.
Don't laugh. It happens. Woodworking is a dangerous sport. Yes, sport, that's the word. Ouch, it hurts too. At this point, I'm going to use it's called a fishtail chisel. It's not absolutely essential that you have one, but they're kind of nice to use for dovetails like this. You can see the shape of it. And what it allows you to do is get into these corners. Okay, I've done some fine tuning here, and I think we're ready for a test fit. Oh, there we go. Okay, I'm no Rob Cosman, but I think that looks pretty good, actually. Kind of happy with that. I've got some fine tuning to do here. You'll see the occasional gap in these dovetails, but I've got some tricks up my sleeve for fixing those. So, not so bad, some blood, sweat, and tears, but we got there. So anyway, thanks for joining us. When we come back, I'm going to glue this up. We're going to plane the sides. We're going to have a bottom for it. We're going to put the knobs on the front. We're going to put a finish on them. We've got lots to do, but that's all next time. Thanks for stopping by, and see you then.
Wasn't that great?